I'm putting AI to the test and asking Chat GPT to lower my taxes. Here's what I found. Where can I move if I don't want to pay taxes? If you're looking to minimize your tax burden or explore jurisdictions with favorable tax conditions, there are several places to consider. Tax laws are subject to change and vary based on individual circumstances, so it's advisable to talk to a specialist in international taxation. All right, here we go. Here are the countries associated with low or no taxes. Monaco, we're going old school. The Cayman Islands, British overseas territory with no income tax, often chosen by businesses and investment funds. Bermuda, Bahamas, the UAE, Vanuatu. Andorra has a low tax regime with okay. So Andorra has some taxes. The other countries generally don't, although places like the UAE are rolling out some taxes on certain companies, certain real estate. But okay, so I've got some places that I can move. Do I have to move to an island to avoid paying taxes? Because most of these sound like islands. No, moving to an island is not the only option to reduce or avoid paying taxes. Some islands and offshore jurisdictions are known for their favorable tax. There's also, okay, here's some other options. Tax havens, which I'm not entirely sure what that means. It's kind of a catch-all term. Switzerland, Luxembourg, Malta, or Singapore. Sure, they have attractive taxes for certain kinds of situations. Territorial tax systems, which are basically where you only pay tax on money generated in the country. And so you live in one country and you have your business and investments somewhere else. Kind of following my global citizenship sandwich. Tax-free investments. Oh my goodness. Okay, and so now everything always goes back to domestic. If you invest in a health savings account, like you can save taxes. Like, okay, like we're saving taxes with like an eyedropper now. Tax treaties avoid double taxation, but that's not going to lower your taxes. That's where you move from one high tax country to the next. And then residence-based taxation. So far we've determined if I don't want to pay any taxes, I can move to a number of countries, one of which has taxes. The others often don't. We've identified many of them, like the Bahamas, Bermuda, Caymans, etc., Vanuatu, as islands. And so Chat GPT says, no, you don't have to move to an island. And then it talks more about like countries that have taxes, but they're not super high. And yet Luxembourg isn't really a tax haven for individuals. It's more for like funds and stuff like that. Okay. Can I reduce my taxes if I'm American? I hear it is not possible. As an American citizen, the U.S. has a worldwide tax system, which means that the U.S. citizens are generally subject to tax on their worldwide income. However, there are strategies to help Americans reduce their tax liability. Number one, the foreign earned income exclusion. So you can earn about $10,000 a month doing that. And if you structure that through a foreign corporation, you could potentially pay zero tax all across the board on that income. Foreign tax credits, tax treaties, not really ways to get to zero necessarily. Retirement accounts, again, that's domestic. So the challenge that I'm seeing here is the challenge that we often talk about at Nomad Capitalist, where it almost always goes back to like, hey, don't move to a low tax or zero tax country. Like, just put more money in your 401k. It's like, my plan is you want to get out of a system where you're doing a bunch of inorganic stuff, putting your money in government retirement accounts that have a lot of limitations, or buying stuff to get tax deductions for your business, when you could just move somewhere and go where you're treated best. And so, of course, it's important to talk to a specialist. What is the best tax-free country for me? I'll do the commenters. Just tell me one. I was okay, I can't. I have to wait for it to type. Determining the best tax-free country for you depends on various factors. Residence requirements. So generally speaking, if you want to lower your taxes by moving overseas, you're going to have to be a resident of a certain country. You're going to want to have tax residence somewhere, either through a paper tax residence or through actually living somewhere that's tax-friendly. So if you become a tax resident of a country that doesn't tax you, either because they don't have income tax or because it's territorial tax or there's a multi-year exception, or there's a remittance-based tax in a non-dom country, or it's a lump sum where you pay something and that's capped, then you're going to be living there. Or you're going to be a digital nomad, which increasingly does not work for Western citizens, except for Americans, interestingly enough, because the U.S. will always tax them, but you get less time in the U.S. then. So it also talks about lifestyle and quality of life. Okay, that's obviously important, where I'm going to move. Business opportunities. I don't know why everyone always talks about this. Where you live does not have to be where your business or investments live. In fact, it's probably a good idea for it to be separate, not only because it's good tactical planning, but just because the places that you want to live may not be good for those investments, right? And so If I were to live in Malaysia, and I do part of the year, would I rather keep my money in Malaysia? I think Malaysia is perfectly safe, but if I want a lot more options for my money and I want the number one place to keep my money in that region, it's in Singapore. Do I want to live in Singapore? No, because the immigration is more strict. Housing costs 10 times as much. There's a huge tax on buying housing now if you are a foreigner. And so where I want to live and where I want to invest and where I want my business to be, you wouldn't move to Malaysia and set up your business in Malaysia unless you're opening up like a restaurant or something. You wouldn't move your online consulting company. Now, you might move it to Labuan in Malaysia, but Labuan no longer has a flat fee, and so you pay 3%, and so you can probably do better than 3%. There aren't that many reasons why you'd want to be in a lesser-known, low-tax country that taxed you 3% rather than 0%, the way Hong Kong or the UAE or the Cayman Islands would do. So I don't understand this business opportunities thing. Cost of living obviously is an issue, and yet if you reduce your taxes from 40% to 0 or even 5%, you can obviously afford to pay a bit more, going back to Monaco. And for some people, Dubai will be more expensive. Bermuda is certainly more expensive. The Caymans are not cheap. What this is missing so far, I think, is all the, what it calls territorial tax countries, the Taiwans, the Malaysias, the Georgias, the Panamas, the Costa Ricas, where the cost of living is less, and you can actually save money while reducing your taxes. It goes on to talk about things like political and economic stability, which I'm not sure why that really impacts taxes. Legal and regulatory environment, I'm not really sure. So I'm just going to say, Chat GPT, just tell me one country, right? Just make it easy, people say. One country that's often mentioned for its tax advantages is the UAE, specifically Dubai. People seem to think that like Dubai is its own country. Dubai, obviously an emirate in the UAE. No personal income tax, no capital gains tax, no wealth tax, no inheritance tax. It's important to know that while Dubai offers these tax advantages, there may be other fees, costs, or regulations to consider. And yes, there's always a trade-off with where you move. And so you don't want to follow the herd and just go to Dubai and it just be like, oh, well, okay, it costs more to maintain my company here, or there's more of an audit requirement here than there may be somewhere else. Or if I do certain kinds of activities, my tax-free nature and my free zone company may go away. It's probably not going to happen. Maybe the banking here isn't as versatile as what it may be somewhere else. So these are all the kinds of questions that you want to consider. Now, let's continue. Can I lower my taxes by getting a second citizenship? I hear Caribbean countries sell passports and have low taxes. Acquiring a second citizenship through Citizenship by Investment Programs, or CBI, including some of the Caribbean, can potentially offer tax planning opportunities. However, it's essential to understand the implications and limitations associated with this strategy. Tax residence, yes. Where you live, where your tax residence is what matters. If you're a U.S. citizen, you'll always really have a U.S. tax residence. And so no matter where you go, the U.S. is always, even if you can dramatically reduce your taxes, they're always going to be like, hey, you have to tell us what's going on. If you live in another Western country, you have to go through what's called tax on residence. And if you spend too much time back in that country, if you don't meet the criteria, they may continue taxing you. As Australia said, hey, we're going to do that with digital nomads. You have to have some permanent home or we're going to tax you. Worldwide income reporting. Many countries, including the United States, have a worldwide tax system. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. The U.S. taxes people on a citizenship-based basis. Australia kind of started to tiptoe in that direction with what we talked about with digital nomads. But other than that, yes, some countries will tell you for the first 3 years if they're leaving your tax residence there, Norway, Mexico, etc., hey, you have to move to a certain pre-approved list of countries. They don't tax you on your citizenship. And once you leave the tax residence, the tax requirements on worldwide income go away. The U.S. is unique in that regard. And then it goes to talk more about tax treaties, which I think really are overrated for many people who are living the nomad capitalist lifestyle. Yes, that may apply if you have dividend income, royalty income, certain kinds of capital gains. But for most kind of income from, let's say, a software company or a consulting business or even a lot of other businesses, I mean, tax treaties may play a role if you have, a lot of physical business in many countries. But for many people who are doing business online, it's not really an issue. Citizenship requirements, yes. So in the Caribbean, you have to make a donation to get citizenship. What if I just vote for Ron DeSantis? Will that lower my taxes as much as moving to Dubai? Voting for a specific political candidate, such as Ron DeSantis, cannot directly lower your taxes to the extent that moving to a tax-friendly jurisdiction like Dubai might. As a voter, you have the ability to support candidates who advocate for certain tax policies, but the actual implementation and impact of tax changes are determined by legislative processes and broader factors. And so therefore, voting for a candidate may contribute to shaping the tax environment. It should say, like, nobody in a country like the US, oh, it uses stakeholders. I hate that word so much. No politician in a high tax country that's like desperate for cash and broke is going to ever lower your taxes as low as if you just went to a place where you could choose your own tax rate. So one of the things I think Chat GPT gets right here is the lifestyle factors on where you want to reduce your taxes. And I think you often see jurisdictions that are overhyped. I mean, so if you go to Southeast Asia, Thailand's a place, a lot of people just kind of go there because that's where you're supposed to go. Dubai is very much in vogue now. For Americans, Puerto Rico has been the place. And so people just kind of follow, and they don't often consider the lifestyle requirements. We've had a lot of clients who are like, I don't really want to move to Puerto Rico. And it's like, then why do you? Why would you? And they're like, that's a good point. And so if we look at the average American client that we have, I think they save like 84, 85% on their taxes. They could save more in many cases, but the issue is they're willing to pay a little bit of something for the lifestyle. Many non-Americans will save a little bit more than that, closer to 90%. But again, they could pay zero in many cases. And so there are some people who just want to pay zero. There are some people who happen to want to live in places where they can pay zero. I didn't move to Malaysia because I can pay practically zero tax there. I moved because I went all over Asia to every single country. I said, I really like this country. Oh, by the way, what a great tax planning opportunity. And so I think much more about my story was circumstantial than people would imagine. But at Nomad Capitalist, we give you the advice of, okay, are you willing to pay 5%? Are you willing to pay 10%? Lifestyle does play a role. So some of what Chat GPT says, I think, is rather kind of stock advice about used tax treaties. Again, I published a book that's on Amazon. And so where I'm tax resident does impact those royalties. However, if those royalties are a fraction of a percent of my income, is it really worth, even if I had to pay the full 30% withholding tax, is that really the issue? On the other hand, we've had folks who are YouTube creators who run ads and they monetize their channel. And if those viewers are in the United States seeing those ads, they do want to look perhaps at a treaty situation. And so I think, tax treaties and retirement accounts and all this stuff is stock advice. We found that people who go to their local tax professionals either often get talked out of going offshore, like, no, you can't do that, it doesn't work. What do you think everyone in Dubai and the Cayman Islands and everywhere else is doing? I mean, why do you think they're all there? Or they say, no, just do more of this, domestic stuff. We saw a guy who bought a jet in the U.S. under the 2022, tax rules, where he got a huge, tax incentive to do that. He still had to pay for the jet. Yes, the jet was at a deep discount at the end of the day, but wouldn't it be better just to move where you want and to keep all of that money? And so when you reach out to either Chat GPT or many domestic tax preparers who don't understand all the options internationally, you're going to get this rather kind of stock advice. At Nomad Capitalist, we've helped people move to 31 different tax-friendly countries, not just the ones that are popular, not just the ones that are well-known. There are plenty of countries in Europe where you might have the lifestyle that you're looking for, where you may have a greater likelihood of getting a second citizenship, and so you can kind of kill two birds with one stone, that are actually relatively tax-friendly. And a lot of people say, hey, the time zone in Western Europe is better, or the time zone in Panama is better than moving to Dubai or to Georgia or to Malaysia. A lot of people, that has been their issue actually, is time zones. That's the stuff that you don't get from AI. All right, let's ask AI. Which is the best tax haven in a U.S. time zone? Puerto Rico, of course. The U.S. Virgin Islands, not very well talked about. So Puerto Rico goes on and talks about some laws that no longer exist. The U.S. Virgin Islands, yes, not something that necessarily a lot of people want to do or qualify for. And so, okay, what if I don't want to move to a U.S. territory? And so now it's going back to Switzerland, Luxembourg. No! Andorra, the Isle of Man, maybe a place to have a company, perhaps not a place to live. Bermuda, Singapore, Cyprus, so not in the time zone. What about U.S. time zones, though? So you can see all the criteria that go into figuring out. And I think what really none of these AI and really not many people understand, since you're seeing so much of the advice that's generated on YouTube and on the web right now, often being generated by AI, don't realize the complication of structuring where your business lives, where your investment lives, and where you live. You want jurisdictions that are tax-friendly for each of those. And so a place that you can live in and not pay tax may have tax on corporations, but if your corporation is somewhere else and the place where you're living doesn't care that your corporation is somewhere else and everything's above board, that's how you optimize for zero tax, not just picking one jurisdiction. And now we're going back to talking about Switzerland. Oh, here we go. Belize and Panama. Okay, fair enough. Not directly affiliated with the United States. And so the point is there's a lot of options, 31 different tax-friendly countries that we've worked with. And I think what Nomad Capitalist helps people do is put the puzzle pieces together, has the network of everybody. If you're going to move from the US to Belize, to Panama, to Switzerland, you need people on both sides of the equation. And most people are specialists. We try to add a generalist element to where you get everybody under one roof, one-stop shopping. And that's really hard to do, even when I'm trying to ask AI the right questions.